Welcome to Workout Masters Healthy Living, episode 33. This is Ruben.
And this is Aram.
And we have an excellent episode. We always have excellent episodes. We had 32 excellent episodes so far, and we're going to have another one today. We're going to talk about gluten tolerance. If you don't know what it is, you better stick around because it's super, super important.
Not only gluten intolerance, we're going to talk about the consumption of grains, which sometimes they link together, of course, but there's a few differences.
Okay, so this is the issue that we have. Majority of people get a lot of inflammation. Inflammation is affecting our health on a big, huge scale. And one of the main components of creating inflammation apparently is the consumption of grains. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about it. What are the grains? What's up with the grains? Everybody seems to be eating the grains.
Well, it's probably one of the most common, staples of food on everyday American diet. And the major problem that I see with grains is that they contain high levels of unsaturated fat, particularly omega-6s, which they are known to actually, begin to create inflammation in the body. And also, they do a number on your blood sugar control because, grains, the starches in grains convert to sugar really, really quickly. So they can make your blood sugar fluctuate real fast. And
so
that's not
there's unsaturated fat, you said?
Yeah, polyunsaturated fats.
Polyunsaturated fat. There is a...
high omega-6s.
High omega-6. Very high in glycemic index.
Yes.
So it converts to sugar fast.
That is correct. Yes.
So it can create a lot of blood sugar regulation problems. And number 3 is gluten, which is a protein within the grain.
Yeah.
That most of the people apparently don't have a good time digesting, or they just have an inability to digest the gluten, which can create a lot of issues within digestive tract.
Yeah.
So what are the signs?
Well, typically what happens when people consume a lot of grains, they will not have good digestions for obvious reasons, because a lot of those grains are difficult to break down, and they will begin to ferment inside of your stomach. So they're going to give you gas, bloating, belching, flatulence, gas, and they're going to start inflaming the inside of your intestinal tract, which it can lead to a host of other problems,
Well, Crohn's disease is one of them. If you have a consistent diarrhea, which is basically what Crohn's disease is, that's a...
Crohn's disease will be one thing. People that are celiacs, they have a hard, they shouldn't even go near anything that actually is made out of grains, because it's going to make them, flare up really bad. On the other hand, one more thing that I forgot to mention before is that all that excess of omega-6 intake, it actually triggers the cascade of arachidonic acid, which is what promotes inflammation in the body. It's good to understand and to know that. The other problem that we often have with gluten is that it begins to actually break down the mucosal barrier and the intestinal wall in our bodies. What happens with that is that we develop what's known as leaky gut syndrome or intestinal permeability. There's different names for pretty much the same matter. And what happens here is that, as the intestinal walls and the stomach walls become more porous, particles of food can actually enter into the bloodstream. And as we have an immune system, the immune system is patrolling through the whole body, making sure that everything is under control and in order. And once your immune system sees one of these unbroken particles of any given grain, or any given food for that matter, that is not being broken down into amino acids, into sugars and starch, or into fatty acids, the body's going to attack it. The one particular thing that's very, very peculiar to gluten is that the amino acid profile in the protein gluten, also known as gliadin, is almost identical in the sequence as also our synovial fluid joint, the synovial fluid in our joints. So
that's a fluid that is within the joint.
Right, it's a fluid that acts as a lubricant in the joints to make sure that they glide nice and smooth without any friction. What happens here is that the body, reacts to that synovial joint fluid the same way that it would attack, the gluten once it feels that it's a threat. And that creates an autoimmune response, which is usually develops itself into arthritis. So every time that I have worked with anybody that has inflammation issues, that has arthritis, celiacs, whether they know it or not, I'll let them find out soon. I always tell them, stay away from eating grains. And this sometimes is one of the hardest things for people to do, because basically that's all they eat, or everything that they eat contains some form or another of grain. It is true that there are certain grains that do not contain gluten. The four major ones are rice, corn, buckwheat, and millet. However, if it's hard to digest one grain, it's going to be hard to digest all the grains.
Yeah, this is the thing, guys. We kind of forgot how people used to eat. That kind of like innate wisdom of our ancestors. Back in the days, anything that was in a nut seed format had to be soaked for a long period of time before human consumption. Now, with the invention of modern methods, doing things faster, supposedly better for a corporation to make more money, that method of soaking seeds and nuts is pretty much forgotten, unfortunately. What happened is, back in the days, people understood that if you actually soak things, you'll digest them better. So one thing that you can do, if you don't want to avoid eating grains, which we highly recommend, yes? Another thing you can do, you can soak them. And soaking actually helps you to get rid of a majority of bad things that are there, which includes actually a phytic acid, which is another thing that is pretty much designed to protect the seed. Now, this is the thing. The thing about seeds and nuts, the seeds want to procreate. In order for them to procreate, they need to get in the water, and only at the time they're going to procreate. So when you put a seed in the water and it sits there for a long time, you pretty much trick the seed into procreation. So it releases the defense mechanism, and ultimately the defense mechanism, that's what creates a lot of troubles when we digest something of that sort. Another way of decreasing amount of bad stuff in the grains is by making basically sour them, making the sourdough bread. We're probably going to just design another episode.
I believe it's a process of fermentation.
Fermentation, exactly. So you just ferment the grains.
It breaks down the husk and other parts of the grain, which makes them a lot more digestible.
Yeah, I find that since it's such a staple in our diet, unfortunately,
and unbeknownst to people.
What's up? Absolutely. It is so common everywhere. So when we talk to clients, a lot of times people look at us like, how come it's everywhere?
And they tell you, I don't need any grains. I'm like,
it's almost impossible. Yeah. It's almost impossible.
It's whole wheat and grain.
It's whole wheat and grain.
Of course not.
So after that, we end up seeing is this a grain? Apparently, we don't even know what the grains are.
Yes.
So let's make it simple, guys. Try to avoid any kind of grain that is out there. Stick to your meats, vegetables, fruits, and chances are you're going to do a whole lot better. Now, this is the kind of thing that I would recommend you. If you have any digestive issues, if you don't feel good, if something bothers you, don't do anything about, oh, grain's good, bad, they're right, they're wrong. Absolutely. Just get off of them. Don't eat them. Don't eat them for a month, and if you don't feel good or better, then they probably don't affect you. But if you feel good, which I pretty much can guarantee you, then they have quite a negative effect on you, and they must be excluded out of your diet for extended period of time, or maybe forever.
That's correct. Quite oftentimes it could take anywhere from 6 months to a year to repair the intestinal wall lining, and in the meantime, you should not touch any grains whatsoever. I usually give people the analogy: think of your gut being inflamed as having sunburn, like a really bad sunburn in your skin.
Would you go back on the sun?
Would you go back on the sun?
That's a good one.
No, of course, that's a given. I mean, you can barely tolerate lukewarm water in your skin, never mind, the sun. And so there is, the same analogy. I tell people, if your gut is, lining is actually messed up because you have abused and overused grains, would you eat any more? Yeah.
Guys, this is very important. It's a huge, huge one. As we see clients that are sick, they don't feel good, probably number one thing is removing grains out of the diet. So if there is any symptom of digestive kind of trouble or anything that you don't feel right, remove that thing out of your diet and you're going to feel better. You have anything else, Ruben?
I think that'll be it, Ruben.
Guys, no grains for right now. If you're interested in more sources, you can read the book Dangerous Grains, No Grain Diet by Dr. McCullough, and there's a bunch of them. Just put grain in the Amazon, you'll find tons of information.
If they go to the Weston A. Price Foundation,
Weston A. Price Foundation have excellent information there too.
There's a lot of articles in the pros and cons of utilizing grains, how you should prepare them, how you have to put them into your meals if you're going to use them, and how to prepare them. It's very important because they can come back to bite you in your behind.
For right now, guys, your future looks better, a whole lot better already. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.